The mission began at midnight, when the city above fell into its enforced quiet period. Jake moved through the tunnels with Luna, Arya, and Nova following behind him, their footsteps silent on the smooth stone floors that Arya had grown over the old concrete. The biosuit adjusted constantly to match the tunnel walls, making Jake feel like he was becoming part of the underground world itself. They reached the maintenance tunnel that ran beneath 5th Street in less than an hour, moving through passages that Jake had never known existed. Arya's root network had already begun its work, growing through the soil and around the bod. Zephyrian sensors like a slow green tide that registered as nothing more than normal plant growth. On the alien monitoring systems, Jake felt the communication plan on his wrist pulse gently as Luna sent him a thought message. The building above them was full of activity, with more guards than usual and elevated stress levels among the Zephyrian operators. Something big was definitely being planned, which made their timing perfect. Nova created a small opening in the tunnel wall, her energy manipulation allowing her to soften the concrete until it flowed like water. They climbed through into the building's basement level, emerging in a storage room filled with alien equipment that hummed with electronic activity. Jake had expected to feel nervous as they entered enemy territory, but instead he found himself thinking more clearly than he had in months. Working with the Ethereans had taught him something important about the difference between human and alien approaches to warfare. The three beautiful aliens were incredibly powerful, but they thought in terms of harmony and balance. Humans, Jake realized, excelled at creative chaos. As they moved through the basement corridors, Jake began to understand why the Ethereans had needed him. Arya could grow plants that would disable security systems, but she did it in ways that followed natural patterns. Nova could manipulate electronics, but her approach was elegant and precise. Luna could sense the emotions of their enemies, but she interpreted those feelings through the lens of Etherean psychology. Jake thought like a human, which meant he thought in ways that the Zephyrians could not predict or counter. When they encountered a security door that required an access card, Arya began growing a vine that would eventually short out the locking mechanism. Nova prepared to create an energy pulse that would override the door's computer. But Jake simply picked up a piece of metal pipe from the floor and wedged it into the doorframe, then threw his weight against the door until the lock mechanism broke with a loud crack. The Etherean stared at him in amazement as the door swung open. Luna sent him a thought message filled with confusion and admiration. "Your solution is so simple," she said through their mental link. "We would have spent 10 minutes creating complex workarounds." "Sometimes the direct approach works best," Jake replied, grinning as he led them deeper into the building. They found the main power coupling on the 3rd basement level, exactly where Nova had predicted it would be. The room was filled with alien technology that pulsed with blue energy, feeding power to the communication systems 4 floors above them. Jake could hear the constant hum of data transmission, millions of messages flowing through the network that coordinated Zephyrian military operations across half the continent. Nova approached the main power conduit with her disruption crystal, but Jake stopped her with a gentle touch on her arm. He had been studying the room's layout while she worked, and his human tactical mind had spotted something the Ethereans had missed. "Wait," he said. "If we just disrupt their primary power system, they'll switch to backup power and be running again in minutes. But look at this." Jake pointed to a series of smaller conduits that branched off from the main system. "Those lead to their environmental controls, security systems, and internal communications. If we place additional disruption devices there, we can create a cascade failure that will take hours to repair." Arya immediately began growing small pods that could carry Nova's energy disruption technology. "I can make carriers for the crystal fragments," she said, her hands already shaping living matter into the tools they needed. Nova nodded and began splitting her original crystal into smaller pieces, each one calibrated to overload a different type of system. "The timing will need to be precise," she said. "If they activate in the wrong sequence, the Zephyrians will detect a sabotage pattern." Jake studied the room again and felt his tactical training take over. "We don't want them to think this is sabotage at all," he said. "We want them to think their own systems failed due to poor maintenance or design flaws." He pointed to a section of the power grid where alien and human technologies have been hastily connected. "That junction looks unstable. If we create the first disruption there, it will look like a compatibility failure between their equipment and our power grid. The other failures will seem like cascade effects from the initial breakdown." Luna's empathic abilities suddenly flared with alarm, and she grabbed Jake's arm. "Someone is coming," she warned. "2 guards checking the basement levels. They are suspicious about something." Jake felt his human adaptability kick in as he quickly revised their plan. "Nova, get those crystals in place now. Arya, can you create a distraction that will draw the guards away from this area?" Arya smiled and pressed her hands against the floor. Within seconds, plants began growing throughout the building's basement. Levels triggered by root networks she had established days earlier. The alien guards would find maintenance rooms suddenly filled with earth vegetation, creating exactly the kind of mysterious but non-threatening anomaly that would occupy their attention for hours. Nova finished placing her disruption devices, just as the sound of Zephyrian voices echoed from the corridors above them. Jake led his team to an emergency exit that Arya's roots had already opened, and they slipped back into the tunnel system just as the first power fluctuations began to cascade through the building's electrical grid. They were 3 blocks away when the communications center went dark. Jake watched through a periscope that Nova had created from bent light as Zephyrian technicians rushed around the building, trying to understand what had gone wrong with their supposedly perfect systems. Beauty of their human-inspired approach became clear over the next several hours. Instead of recognizing the incident as sabotage, the Zephyrians concluded that human electrical systems were incompatible with their technology in ways they had not anticipated. They began ordering modifications to similar facilities across the continent, changes that would actually make those installations more vulnerable to future attacks. "Your people's chaotic thinking is more powerful than we realize," Luna said as they returned to the underground sanctuary. "We created a single point of failure, but your approach turned it into a systemic weakness that will affect all their installations." Jake felt a deep satisfaction as he realized what they had accomplished together. The Ethereans had provided the tools and abilities needed to reach their target, but human tactical thinking had turned a simple sabotage mission into a strategic victory that would pay dividends for months to come. Arya had grown new plants during their mission, living sensors that would monitor Zephyrian communications and alert them to important developments. Nova had left behind crystal fragments that would continue to cause random equipment failures, making the aliens question the reliability of their own technology. Luna had mapped the emotional patterns of key Zephyrian personnel, giving them insights into enemy psychology that no human resistance cell had ever possessed. But more importantly, they had learned to work together in ways that amplified both human and Etherean strengths. Jake's willingness to embrace chaos and improvisation had inspired the 3 aliens to think beyond their traditional approaches, while their advanced abilities had given him tools he could never have imagined. "This is just the beginning," Jake said as they stood in the glowing garden that had become their shared home. "Wait until the other resistance cells see what we can accomplish when humans and Ethereans fight together. The Zephyrians won't know what hit them." Jake spent the next 3 days learning about the Etherean way of life, and each discovery amazed him more than the last. Luna showed him how their underground network stretched across the entire city, connecting dozens of hidden gardens through tunnels that the aliens had carved with their bare hands. The passages were lined with bioluminescent plants that provided light without any need for electricity, and the air stayed fresh through a system of living filters that Arya had grown from modified earth vegetation. The 3 aliens worked together, like parts of a single organism, each contributing their unique abilities to maintain their hidden world. Arya spent her mornings tending to the food gardens, coaxing fruits and vegetables to grow in impossible abundance from soil that should not have supported any life at all. Her touch could accelerate plant growth by weeks in a matter of minutes, and she had modified Earth crops to be more nutritious and resistant to the pollution that the Zephyrians had brought to the surface. Nova worked with the more technical aspects of their survival, using her control over energy to power their equipment and create the defensive systems that kept them hidden. She could bend light around entire sections of tunnel, making them invisible to any scanning equipment the Zephyrians might use. Her abilities also extended to electronic manipulation, and she had been quietly sabotaging alien communication networks. For months without leaving any trace of her interference, Luna served as their coordinator and strategic mind. But Jake quickly realized that her abilities went far beyond simple leadership. She could sense the emotional states of living beings from great distances, allowing her to detect approaching danger long before any physical signs appeared. She also possessed a form of telepathy that let her communicate directly with other Etherians, and Jake discovered that she could extend this ability to humans with enough concentration. The communication center that Nova had shown him in the water images sat in the middle of downtown New Angeles, surrounded by Zephyrian patrols and automated defense systems. Jake had studied the building for weeks with other resistance members, but they had never found a way to get close without triggering the alien sensors. The facility coordinated all Zephyrian military communications in the western half of North America, making it a high-value target that could cripple their operations if destroyed. Jake explained human military tactics to the three aliens, sharing everything he had learned during his time in the Marines and his months with the Resistance. The Etherians listened with fascination as he described concepts like diversionary attacks, psychological warfare, and the importance of controlling information flow during combat operations. "Your people think in ways that confuse our enemies," Luna said as Jake finished explaining how resistance cells maintain operational security. "The Zephyrians expect order and predictable responses. They cannot understand minds that create chaos deliberately." Arya had been working on something while they talked, her hands moving through the air as she shaped living matter with her thoughts. Jake watched as she created what looked like a second skin, a thin membrane that shifted colors and textures as she adjusted its properties. "This will let you move unseen," she said, offering the biosuit to Jake. "It reads the environment and changes to match, but it also masks your heat signature and scent." Nova added her own contribution to Jake's equipment, a small crystal that pulsed with inner light. "This will disrupt their electronics when activated," she explained, "but it must be placed very close to their main communication array. The effect will look like a power surge, nothing that would suggest sabotage." Jake held the crystal up to the light and marveled at the way energy moved within its structure. "How does it work?" "It stores electromagnetic energy and releases it in a pattern that overloads their circuits," Nova said. "I have been studying their technology since we arrived on Earth. They use very efficient systems, but efficiency creates vulnerability to the right kind of interference." Luna approached Jake with something that looked like a small plant, its leaves shifting between silver and deep green. "This will let us stay in contact during the mission," she said. "Hold it against your skin and think your words. We will hear you and can respond the same way." Jake took the plant and felt it warm against his palm. Almost immediately, he could sense the presence of the three aliens in his mind, not as voices, but as feelings and impressions that conveyed meaning more directly than speech. The sensation was strange but not unpleasant, like having trusted friends standing just behind his shoulder. They spent the rest of the day planning their approach to the communication center. Jake drew maps of the surface streets and marked the patrol routes he had memorized, while the Etherians showed him tunnel entrances that would let them emerge within a block of their target. Luna used her empathic abilities to track the emotional patterns of the guards, identifying the times when they were most relaxed and least alert. "The Zephyrians follow strict schedules," Jake observed as they studied the patrol timings. "They never vary their routes or change their shift rotations. It makes them predictable." "Predictability is strength to them," Arya said. "They believe that perfect order cannot be defeated by chaos. This is why they always fail against species like yours." Nova created a three-dimensional light map of the target building, showing the internal layout based on electromagnetic signatures she had detected during her previous surveillance. The communication array sat on the roof, protected by automated guns and scanner systems that would detect any approaching aircraft or climbing attempt. The building has 4 levels underground, Nova explained, pointing to the lower sections of her light map. The main power systems are there, along with backup communication equipment. If we can reach that level, I can place the disruption crystal directly into their primary power coupling. Jake studied the underground approach and saw the tactical advantages immediately. We go in through the old subway maintenance tunnel that runs under 5th Street, he said. I can get us to the building's foundation, but we'll need a way through their underground sensors. Arya smiled and pressed her hands against the floor of their chamber. Jake watched as root-like structures grew from her fingertips and spread across the concrete, following paths that seemed to map the underground utility lines. I can grow a path through their sensor network, she said. Living roots that will register as normal urban plant growth, nothing that would trigger there. Security protocols. Luna added the final piece to their plan. I will monitor the emotions of everyone in the building, she said. If any guard becomes suspicious or if their attention focuses on our location, I can warn you instantly through the communication plant. Jake felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness as he realized they were actually going to attempt this mission. The Resistance had dreamed of striking at the Zephyrian communication network, but they had never possessed the tools or abilities needed to succeed. Now, with alien technology and powers that seemed like magic, they had a real chance to deal a significant blow to the occupation forces. When do we go? Jake asked. Tonight, Luna said. Nova has detected increased communication traffic from the facility. Something important is being planned, which means our disruption will cause maximum damage to their operations. Jake picked up his rifle and checked his equipment one final time. The biosuit felt strange against his skin, constantly shifting temperature and texture as it adjusted to his movements. The communication plan had attached itself to his wrist like a living bracelet, its leaves tickling his skin as they maintained contact with the Etherians. Are you ready for this? Arya asked, her golden skin patterns pulsing with what Jake had learned to recognize as concern. Jake looked at each of the 3 aliens, who had become his unlikely allies in the span of just a few days. They were risking everything to help humanity fight back against an enemy that had already destroyed their own world. Their beauty and grace had strength and determination that matched anything he had seen among human resistance fighters. Let's go show the Zephyrians what happens when Earth fights back, Jake said. Jake stared at the 3 beings in front of him and tried to make sense of what Luna had just said. The golden-skinned one stepped forward and spoke in the same musical language, her voice flowing like water over stones. The patterns on her skin pulsed with gentle light as she talked, and Jake found himself mesmerized by the way they moved. Luna turned to her companion and replied in their language, then looked back at Jake. This is Arya, she said, pointing to the golden one. And Nova, she added, indicating the purple-skinned being whose hair continued to shift through different colors like a living rainbow. Jake lowered his rifle completely and set it on the ground to show he meant no harm. You said you were waiting for someone like me, he said. What did you mean? The 3 Etherians exchanged glances, communicating in ways that went beyond their musical speech. Jake could sense them sharing thoughts somehow, their eyes meeting in patterns that suggested a deeper connection than simple conversation. Nova spoke for the first time, her voice deeper than the others, but just as melodic. She pointed upward toward the surface and made harsh clicking sounds that Jake recognized as Zephyrian language. Then she shook her head and made a gesture across her throat. She says the Zephyrians are enemies to all life, Luna translated. They destroy worlds and enslave peoples. They came to our home planet many cycles ago. Arya stepped closer to Jake and touched one of the glowing plants. The silver leaves responded to her touch by growing brighter, and new flowers bloomed instantly where her fingers had been. She spoke in Etherian, and Luna nodded. Arya says we came here as scouts long before the invasion, Luna explained. We were sent to find worlds that might resist the Zephyrian Empire. But when we saw Earth and its people, we decided to stay and help when the time came. Jake looked around at the transformed subway station with new understanding. You did all this? You turned this place into a garden? Nova smiled and waved her hand in the air. Colors flowed from her fingers like liquid light, forming shapes and patterns that danced through the space before fading away. She spoke to Luna, who translated again. Nova says this is easy for us. We can change dead places into living ones. The Zephyrians do the opposite. They take life and make it serve their machines. Jake thought about the factories the aliens had built on the surface, the gray buildings that pump smoke into the sky and process human workers like cattle. Why are you hiding down here? He asked. With abilities like yours, you could fight them. The three Etherians fell silent, and Jake could feel sadness in the air around them. Luna spoke quietly, her voice filled with pain. The Zephyrians hunt our people with special hatred. They fear what we represent: beauty, harmony, growth. These things threaten their order. Arya touched her golden skin where the patterns were brightest, and Jake saw scars hidden beneath the glowing marks. Nova pulled back her shifting hair to reveal similar markings on her neck. Luna turned so Jake could see her back, where silver lines traced across her blue skin in patterns that looked like old wounds. We are the last of our kind on this world, Luna said. Others came with us, but the Zephyrians found them. They made examples of our people to show what happens to those who resist. Jake felt anger building in his chest, the same rage that had driven him to join the resistance. That's why I fight them, he said. They think they can just take whatever they want, hurt whoever gets in their way. Nova stepped forward and placed her hand on Jake's arm. Her touch was warm and seemed to calm the anger inside him. She spoke in Etherian, and Jake found that he could almost understand her meaning without translation. She says you have the fire that burns but does not consume, Luna said. This is rare among humans. Most either burn out quickly or let the fire die. Jake looked at each of the three aliens in turn. They were beautiful in ways that seemed impossible, but more than that, they radiated a sense of peace and strength that he had not felt since before the invasion. You said you were waiting for someone like me. What do you need? Arya walked to one of the water streams and knelt beside it. She dipped her hands into the clear water and began to shape it with her fingers. The water rose into the air and formed images that showed scenes from above ground. Jake saw Zephyrian patrols, human workers in the factories, and resistance fighters hiding in buildings. We have been watching the surface, Luna said. We know about the resistance, about the humans who fight back. But we cannot help them without revealing ourselves. Nova joined Arya at the water stream and added her own power to the images. Colors flowed through the water shades, showing Jake things he had never seen before. Underground tunnels connected all across the city, hidden chambers filled with growing things, and passages that could move people unseen. We have built a network beneath the city, Luna explained. Safe places, hidden paths, resources that could help your people. But we need someone who knows the surface, who understands human ways of fighting. Jake studied the water images and began to see the possibilities. The resistance had been limited to hit-and-run attacks because they had nowhere safe to plan or hide. The Zephyrians controlled the surface so completely that any gathering of humans was quickly discovered and crushed. You want me to be a bridge, Jake said, between your people and mine. Luna smiled, and Jake felt warmth spread through the chamber. Yes, but first, you must understand what we offer and what we ask in return. Arya stood and walked to Jake, holding out her hands. When he took them, Jake felt a strange sensation, as if knowledge was flowing directly into his mind. He saw images of Etherian technology that looked more like living things than machines. Plants that could provide food, water, and shelter. Creatures that could carry messages across great distances. Tools that responded to thought and emotion rather than buttons and switches. Nova touched Jake's shoulder, and more knowledge flowed into him. He saw how Etherians manipulated energy and light, creating illusions that could fool electronic sensors and hide entire groups of people. He learned about their ability to disrupt Zephyrian technology without leaving traces that would reveal the source of the sabotage. "This is what we can teach," Luna said. "But we also need to learn from you. Humans fight in ways we do not understand. You create chaos where we seek harmony. You adapt and change where we follow patterns." Jake felt overwhelmed by everything he had learned, but also excited. For the first time since the invasion, he could see a path to real victory. "The other resistance cells need to know about this," he said. "But they'll need proof before they trust aliens, even friendly ones." Arya spoke to the others in Etherian, and Jake caught words that seemed familiar now. They were discussing something, weighing options and considering risks. "We propose a test," Luna said finally. "One mission, together. Something that will show both sides what we can accomplish when we work as one." Nova created a new image in the water, showing a Zephyrian facility on the surface. Jake recognized it as a communication center that the Resistance had wanted to attack for weeks, but had never found a way to approach without being detected. "If we succeed," Luna continued, "then we talk about a larger alliance. If we fail, we part ways, and you forget you ever found us." Jake looked at the three beautiful aliens who had just offered him the key to winning the war. He thought about the friends he had lost, the people suffering under Zephyrian rule, and the chance to finally strike back with real power. "When do we start?" he asked. Jake Martinez pressed his back against the cold concrete wall and listened to the sounds above him. Heavy boots stomped across the street overhead, and alien voices spoke in their harsh, clicking language. The Zephyrians were still hunting him, and they were getting closer with each passing minute. He wiped sweat from his forehead and checked his rifle one more time. The weapon felt light in his hands after months of fighting, but he knew bullets would not help him now. What he needed was distance and a place to hide until the search parties moved on to other parts of the city. The storm drain stretched out in front of him like a dark tunnel leading into the earth. Jake had been in these tunnels before, but never this deep. Most of the Resistance fighters stayed close to the surface, where they could escape quickly if needed. Going deeper meant risking getting lost in the maze of pipes and abandoned subway. Lines that ran beneath New Angeles got Jake heard more voices above and made his choice. He moved deeper into the tunnel, using his flashlight to guide the way. The beam cut through the darkness and showed him a path that sloped downward into the earth. Water dripped from somewhere in the distance, and the air grew cooler as he walked. 6 months ago, Jake had been a different person. He worked at a garage fixing cars and spent his weekends fishing at the lake. Then the ships came down from the sky like falling stars, and everything changed. The Zephyrians announced that Earth now belonged to their empire, and humans would serve as workers in their new order. Most people accepted the occupation without fighting. They were scared and confused, and the aliens promised them safety if they followed the rules. Jake might have done the same thing if he had not seen what happened to his neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, when she asked too many questions about her missing son. The tunnel branched off in 3 directions, and Jake chose the middle path. His boots splashed through shallow water that smelled like rust and old rain. The walls were covered in graffiti from before the invasion, messages and drawings that seemed like they came from another world now. Jake remembered his first resistance mission 3 months ago. 5 humans with hunting rifles trying to stop an alien supply convoy. They managed to destroy 2 trucks before the Zephyrian soldiers arrived with their energy weapons. Jake was the only one who made it out alive that day. The tunnel grew wider as he walked, and Jake realized he was in an old subway line that had been abandoned years before the invasion. Train tracks ran along the floor, covered in dust and debris. His flashlight beam revealed old advertisements on the walls, pictures of happy families, selling soap and cars and vacations that no one could take anymore. Jake heard something that made him stop walking. It was not the sound of boots or alien voices from above. This sound came from somewhere ahead of him in the tunnel, a soft humming noise that seemed almost musical. He turned off his flashlight and let his eyes adjust to the darkness. There was light coming from somewhere up ahead. But it was not electric light. It had a blue-green color that reminded Jake of the ocean on a summer day. The humming sound continued, rising and falling like a song without words. Jake moved forward carefully, keeping his rifle ready. The resistance had taught him never to trust anything that seemed safe or beautiful. The Zephyrians were masters of deception, and they had used false promises to control most of the human population. The tunnel opened into a large chamber that had once been a subway station. Jake could see the old platform and the signs that told travelers which trains to catch. But everything else had changed in ways that made no sense to him. Dot plants grew along the walls, but they were not like any plants Jake had ever seen. Their leaves were silver and seemed to glow with their own light. Flowers hung from the ceiling like stars, and they pulsed with soft colors that changed as he watched. The air smelled sweet and clean, nothing like the stale underground air he expected. Jake saw water flowing in streams that had not been there before, clear water that reflected the strange light from the plants. Small creatures moved in the water, things that looked like fish but swam through the air as easily as through the stream. In the center of the chamber, 3 figures moved among the plants. They were too far away for Jake to see clearly, but their shapes were graceful and fluid. They seemed to be tending the garden, touching the plants with gentle hands and singing in voices that created the humming sound he had heard. Jake crouched behind a pile of old concrete and watched them work. The figures were tall and slender, and they moved with a grace that no human could match. Their skin seemed to reflect the light from the plants, and their hair flowed like water even though there was no wind in the chamber. One of the figures looked up suddenly, as if she had sensed his presence. Jake held his breath and tried to remain perfectly still. The figure spoke to the others in a language that sounded like music, and all 3 of them stopped what they were doing. Jake realized that these were not humans, but they were not Zephyrians either. The aliens who had conquered Earth were tall and angular, with gray skin and cold black eyes. These beings looked different, softer somehow, and the way they moved reminded Jake of dancers. The first figure began walking toward his hiding place, and Jake knew he had been discovered. He stood up slowly and kept his rifle lowered, hoping that his actions would show he did not want to fight. The being approached him without fear, and Jake could see her more clearly now. Her skin was pale blue like morning sky, and her hair was silver like moonlight on water. Her eyes were large and bright, filled with intelligence and something else that Jake could not name. She wore clothing that seemed to be made from the same material as the plants, flowing and alive. She stopped a few feet away from Jake and tilted her head to one side, studying him with curious eyes. She spoke in her musical language, and Jake shook his head to show he did not understand. She tried again with different sounds, and then she placed her hand against her chest and said something that sounded like Luna. Jake understood that she was telling him her name. He lowered his rifle completely and pointed to himself. "Jake," he said, and the being repeated the word with a smile that seemed to light up the entire chamber. The other 2 figures approached them now, moving with the same careful grace. One had golden skin marked with intricate patterns that seemed to glow with their own light. The other had deep purple skin and hair that shifted colors like the northern lights Jake had seen in pictures. They spoke among themselves in their musical language, and Jake caught glimpses of meaning even though he could not understand the pata standa words. They seemed to be discussing what to do about him, whether he was dangerous or could be trusted. Jake realized that he had stumbled into something incredible, something that could change everything about the war against the Zephyrians. These beings had created a paradise in the depths of the city, hidden from the occupation forces above. They had technology and abilities that seemed like magic, and they had been living here in secret, The blue-skinned being called Luna spoke. To him again, this time in broken English. "You are human," she said, making it sound like a question and a statement at the same time. Jake nodded and found his voice. "Yes," he said, "and you are not Zephyrian." Luna smiled again and shook her head. "No," she said, "we are Etherean. We have been waiting for someone like you." The docking bay of the New Horizon filled with a sound like crystal wind chimes as 3 Veltar beings materialized from their transport beam. Each one stood nearly 8 feet tall, their bodies made of different colored crystal that reflected the harsh docking bay lights in sharp, intimidating patterns. The leader's crystal structure was deep purple with veins of silver running through it, marking him as a high-ranking member of their society. Captain Morrison stood waiting for them with security, Chief Dan Phillips at his side. Both men wore their dress uniforms and tried to look as diplomatic as possible, though the energy weapons visible on the Veltar visitors made the situation feel anything but friendly. "I am Commander Velthok of the Crystal Harmony," the purple crystal being announced through his translation device. "We have come to retrieve our contaminated crew member and cleanse her of alien corruption. Where is Zareth?" "She's currently undergoing medical treatment," Captain Morrison replied carefully. "Our doctor is working with her to resolve the situation safely." The second Veltar, whose crystal body was a menacing red color, stepped forward. "There is no safe resolution to biolink contamination. We have the proper purification tools to remove the infected portions of her crystal structure. This treatment must begin immediately." Meanwhile, in the laboratory several decks below, Lisa and Zareth were reaching the most critical phase of their synchronization process. The biolink between them now glowed with such intensity that it lit up the entire room, casting silver shadows on the walls and equipment. "I can see your entire world through your memories," Lisa whispered, her voice filled with awe. "The crystal forcing with harmonies that connect every living thing. It's the most beautiful form of communication I've ever experienced." Zareth's crystal body had taken on a new color, a shining silver gold that seemed to pulse with inner light. "And through your memories, I understand why humans never abandon each other. Your species survives by forming bonds that transcend individual survival. You would die for strangers because you see all conscious beings as part of your extended family." Dr. Carter monitored their vital signs with growing amazement. "This is incredible. The biolink isn't just sharing your thoughts, it's actually improving your physical health. Lisa, your cellular regeneration rate has increased by 40%. Zareth, your crystal matrix is more stable than I've ever seen it." Amy Rodriguez looked up from her engineering console with excitement. "The biolink energy is reaching perfect resonance. According to the Kefma records, this is the state they call transcendent understanding." But their moment of breakthrough was interrupted by the ship's communication system crackling to life. "All crew members report to emergency stations," came the voice of Communications Officer Chris Taylor. "We have armed visitors aboard who are demanding immediate access to the laboratory." Captain Morrison's voice followed immediately after. "Dr. Carter, the Veltar purification team is on their way to your location. They're not interested in negotiation." Lisa felt her heart race with fear, but the biolink responded by sending waves of calming energy through her body. "Zareth, your people are here. Are you ready to show them that not all biolinks are weapons?" Zareth's crystal structure chimed with determination. "I am ready, but they will not listen to words alone. We must demonstrate that our connection has made us stronger, not weaker." The laboratory doors slid open and Commander Velthik entered, with his 2 companions, followed by Captain Morrison and his security team. The Veltar commander carried a device that looked like a crystal blade surrounded by energy fields, the purification tool designed to cut through any substance while leaving crystal structures unharmed. "Zareth," Commander Velthek said, his voice heavy with what sounded like grief, "we have come to free you from this abomination. The purification will be swift, and though you will be damaged, you will be clean." Zareth remained seated in her chair, connected to Lisa by the glowing silver biolink. Her crystal body now shone with that beautiful silver gold color that none of the visiting Veltar had ever seen before. "Commander Velthuk, I ask you to observe before you act," Zareth said, her voice carrying harmonics that made her words sound like music. "This biolink is not the weapon our ancestors encountered. It is a bridge of understanding created by the ancient builders." The red crystal Veltar stepped forward aggressively. "Contamination speaks lies to preserve itself. Stand aside, human, so we can cleanse our sister." But Lisa didn't move from her chair. Instead, she looked directly at Commander Velthuk and spoke in a voice that carried surprising authority. "I understand why your people fear biolinks. I've experienced Zareth's memories of the force-bonding war. I know how raiders used these organisms as weapons to drain the life from your people." Commander Velthuk's crystal structure flickered with surprise. "You cannot know of the force-bonding war. That history is not shared with aliens." "I know it because Zareth shared it with me through this connection," Lisa explained. "Just as I shared my memories of human cooperation and friendship with her. This biolink doesn't steal thoughts. It creates understanding between species." Zareth rose from her chair, and as she did, Lisa rose with her, the biolink allowing them to move in perfect synchronization. "Commander, look at my crystal structure. Have you ever seen a Veltar glow with this color before?" The three visiting Veltar examined Zareth's silver gold radiance with growing confusion. In their entire species history, crystal bodies had never displayed such colors. "This is impossible," the third Veltar whispered. "No contamination creates beauty. Alien corruption dulls our crystal essence and makes us weak." "Then explain why I'm stronger now than I was before the connection," Zareth challenged. "My resonance is purer, my thoughts are clearer, and I carry within me the knowledge of what it means to be part of a species that never abandons its friends." Dr. Carter stepped forward with his medical scanner. "Commander Velthuk, with your permission, I'd like to show you the medical data we've collected. This biolink has actually repaired cellular damage in both subjects and improved their overall health." Amy Rodriguez activated her engineering displays, showing the energy patterns flowing between Lisa and Zareth. "The organism isn't parasitic. It's symbiotic. It takes energy from both subjects, but gives back even more, creating a net positive effect." Commander Velthuk studied the data with the careful attention of someone who had spent his life studying crystal science. "These readings suggest that your crystal matrix has been enhanced rather than damaged. But this contradicts everything we know about biolink contamination. Because the biolinks you encountered were used as weapons," Lisa explained. "They were forced connections made in violence and fear. This connection was accidental, and we approached it with curiosity and friendship instead of hatred and terror." Zareth extended her free arm toward Commander Velthuk in a gesture of openness. "I have learned that humans possess a quality we Veltar have forgotten, the willingness to risk everything to save others. When this human could have demanded that I be cut free to save herself, she instead chose to find a solution that would save us both." The biolink between Lisa and Zareth began to pulse with a new rhythm, and both women felt a strange sensation of loosening. The organism had finally achieved its purpose, creating true understanding between two different species. "It's working," Amy announced with excitement. "The biolink is beginning to release voluntarily. The organism is dissolving itself now that it has accomplished what it was designed to do." Lisa and Zareth looked at each other as the silver substance slowly faded away, leaving their arms free, but their minds forever changed by the experience they had shared. "We are no longer connected by the biolink," Zareth told her people. "But we are connected by something stronger, genuine understanding and friendship." Commander Velthuk lowered his purification blade and studied the two women with new respect. "Perhaps it is time for the Veltar to reconsider our isolation. If biolinks can create understanding instead of destruction, then our ancestors' fears may have blinded us to possibilities for cooperation." Captain Morrison stepped forward with a diplomatic smile. Commander, I'd like to propose a joint research mission. Our species working together to study the ancient builders' technology safely and responsibly. Lisa flexed her free arm and smiled at Zareth, who glowed with that beautiful silver gold color that would forever mark her as the first. Veltar to prove that some connections make you stronger instead of weaker. Humans don't give up on each other, Lisa said simply. And now, thanks to this experience, neither will the Veltar.